Hey everybody, welcome to our UT opponent preview of the South Carolina Gamecocks. I am Vince Ferrara. South Carolina hosting Tennessee this Saturday night in Columbia. 3-3 record, 2-3 in SEC play. And honestly, South Carolina has been disappointing this year. I thought they'd be the second best team in the SEC East, and it has not played out that way. They've been highly inconsistent. They've been on a win-loss pattern. Coming off of an open week are the Gamecocks, while Tennessee had to deal with Alabama at home. South Carolina last lost to Texas A&M at home. Now, South Carolina does get probably their best player on defense in Buck linebacker and captain DJ Wanham back. He led the team in sacks last year. He's a terrific player, but he hadn't been able to play since week 1. Now, before you scoff at one player coming back making a big difference, remember Florida got linebacker David Reese back in the game with Tennessee. That was his first game back, and he made a big difference on that defense. South Carolina hoping for the open week and Wanham coming back to help them out. Now, obviously, Will Muschamp's had a ton of success against Tennessee, 6-0 between his time at South Carolina and at Tennessee. South Carolina does some things well. They are 4th in the nation and number 2 in the SEC in third down defense, just giving up about 25% on third down. That's really good. Now they're struggling on the other hand as well. 113th in the nation and last in the SEC in turnover margin at -5. Now South Carolina stars have not played like stars. They've played okay and inconsistent, but not like they need them to. Like return specialist and wide receiver Deebo Samuel. He has been good, but hasn't been the game changer that he was last year before he suffered the season-ending leg injury. Also, wide receiver Brian Edwards. He leads the team with 5 touchdowns. He's been good, but he's also had some drops and some fumbles. And then quarterback Jake Bentley, who is completing 61% of his passes, has 10 touchdown passes. He's been okay, but 7 interceptions, and that's really been something that has plagued him during his career. At times, Bentley tries to do too much. They haven't been able to run the ball at South Carolina. It looked like on paper, a trio of backs, maybe even a fourth that they could rely on, but they have not been able to stay balanced on offense. And honestly, they abandoned the run pretty quick. But the numbers are ugly. South Carolina is last in the SEC in rushing attempts, yards, and rushing touchdowns. Their longest run on the year is only 29 yards. And they have all 5 starters in every game. They've had the same starting 5 on their offensive line in every game, which makes it even more head-scratching that they've had the lack of success in the ground game. Now, Tennessee is technically listed as having a worse rushing offense. That's because Tennessee is only averaging 140.7 yards per game rushing and 3.6 per carry. So those two numbers are worse than at South Carolina. Muschamp, when he gets balance on offense and gets a 100-yard rusher, 16-3 at South Carolina when not just a 100-yard rusher, but the team rushes for 100 yards, 13-1 when they rush for 150 yards or more. So that balance is something that's going to be important for Tennessee to keep South Carolina from having. And there's been some backs in recent years for South Carolina that have had breakout games that they hadn't performed to that level against others that they have against Tennessee. Different Jeremy Pruitt defense now here to battle with this time. Now, you'll hear the name J.C. Horn. He's a starting nickel for South Carolina. He's the son of former NFL wide receiver Joe Horn. And, of course, he was a big-time recruiting target of the University of Tennessee. Evan Hinson is a tight end for South Carolina. He spent the last couple years on Frank Martin's South Carolina Hoops team. And then Brian McClendon, the offensive coordinator of South Carolina. He's known Jeremy Pruitt for a long time, and Pruitt raving about McClendon this week. And then there were reports that McClendon was a top target of Jeremy Pruitt's when he was putting his staff together after coming on board as Tennessee's head coach. Now, the must-watch most matchup in this game, and there's, as always, there are a lot of options, a lot of different ways you can go. But I'm going to go with South Carolina's third wide receiver in Shi Smith. who lines up in the slot at times, versus Tennessee's star nickel corner, Balin Buchanan. Now, these two won't always match up. You'll see Deebo Samuel sometimes, depending on if Balin Buchanan is on the outside. He may not be at the star spot. If it's not Taylor or Thompson at an outside corner and Buchanan is on the outside, then you could see one of any number of other guys at that nickel star corner spot opposite of either Smith or Deebo Samuel for South Carolina. They really rotate their positions for those guys a lot, but I think it get dicier if you go beyond Buchanan. If it's Buchanan versus Smith, then I think that'll be pretty intriguing. But I think that's an area that could really be troubling for Tennessee. They're banged up in the secondary. They're awfully young. And look, Edwards and Deebo Samuel are going to be tough covers for Tennessee, but then that's where you could get an advantage for South Carolina in that matchup. Look, I think that Tennessee's receivers can have some success against South Carolina's secondary as well. The key is going to be get the ball out quick, jump balls, and then take some shots down the field. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have pass protection. South Carolina only has 10 sacks. That's fewer than Tennessee's defense. And Tennessee will be without Trey Smith, as it was discovered that Trey Smith is out indefinitely because of blood clots in his lungs. And we certainly wish Trey Smith a full and speedy recovery. He is an unbelievable player that I don't think has been able to play 100% this year with what he had to deal with in the offseason with the clots. And then from all accounts, he's a tremendous player. He's been just a class act every dealing that we've had with him. So wish Trey Smith the best. Now, as far as what Tennessee does on that offensive line, I think the most likely option would be Nathan Niehaus, their right guard, slotting him out to left tackle. He's been there and played there in place of Trey Smith a little bit when Smith has had to come out of ball games. He's listed second team on the depth chart at left tackle because you have more options at those guard spots. You can move Jerome Carvin back at the right guard spot in place of Niehaus, and then if Jameer Johnson is healthy, he could play left guard. There's also other guys that have played tackle. You've got Drew Richmond, who's been the right tackle. He's played most of his career at left tackle. Marcus Tatum has played both tackle spots. Chance Hall has played both tackle spots. So you have other guys that have experience there, but just on a guess, I think Niehaus might be your first option there. So lots of intrigue in this game. Very important game for Tennessee in their hopes to get to a bowl game and improve off of last year's win total. All right, that's our wrap-up of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Be sure to check back with us next week. We'll tell you about Tennessee's opponent, Charlotte. Be sure to go to sportsradiownnml.com for much more on the Vols on a daily basis. I'm Vince Ferrara at Vince Sports on Twitter. Thanks for watching.